Lord Valerius Thorn, king of the northern covens, watched from the shadowed alcove as Baron Ashworth presented his eldest daughter to the assembled court. The girl was beautiful, pale skin, golden hair, violet eyes that had been carefully trained to demur downward. She was also entirely wrong. Behind her, half hidden by a marble pillar, stood another figure, the other daughter, the one the Baron had tried to leave at home. Valerius saw her hands first, scarred tissue webbing across both palms, the marks of someone who had once reached into fire and refused to let go. She held those hands clasped before her, not in shame but in stillness, waiting. 300 years ago, a woman named Alara had stood exactly that way, same tilt of the chin, same storm-gray eyes that saw too much. Valerius had watched Alara burn for the crime of loving him, her hands the last thing visible as the flames took her. Now her face had returned, worn by a woman the world had already tried to destroy. "Your Majesty," Baron Ashworth said, bowing so low his forehead nearly touched the floor. "May I present my daughter Cordelia? She has been trained in all the graces. She speaks 4 languages. She plays the pianoforte with uncommon skill." Cordelia curtsied. Her smile was perfect and empty. "And the woman behind her?" Valerius asked. The Baron's face went pale, then purple. "That is, she is not, Your Majesty. That is merely Helena, my second daughter. She is not suitable for presentation. Her hands, you see." "I see them clearly." Valerius stepped forward. The court held its breath. "I also see that you attempted to hide her from me. Why?" "She was burned in a fire," the Baron said quickly. "Disfigured. No man of quality would want—" "I am not a man." Valerius let the words hang in the air. "And I am asking her, not you." Helena stepped out from behind the pillar. She was 32 years old, Valerius estimated, with dark hair pulled back in a simple arrangement that suggested she had dressed herself without a lady's maid. Her gown was 3 seasons out of fashion. The scars on her hands caught the candlelight like rivers of pale silk. "Your Majesty," she said. Her voice was steady. "My father offered the beautiful sister because he assumed you would want what every powerful man wants. A decoration. A trophy. A woman who knows how to be invisible in all the ways that matter. And you believe yourself unsuitable for those purposes?" "I believe myself overqualified for them." She lifted her chin. "I was a physician's assistant for 7 years before my father's debts forced him to reclaim me. I have set bones, stitched wounds, and delivered 3 children who would have died without intervention. I count the stitches when I am nervous. 17 syllables in that last sentence, if you were wondering. I speak directly because I have held people's lives in these hands and there was never time for pleasantries." The Baron grabbed her arm. "Helena, silence yourself. Remove your hand from her," Valerius said. The Baron obeyed instantly, stepping back so fast he nearly tripped over Cordelia. "You have held lives in those hands," Valerius repeated. "And the scars? How did you come by them?" "A house fire, 4 years ago. There were patients inside, elderly women in a charity hospital where I worked. The physicians had already fled. I went back for them." Her voice did not waver. "I saved 3, lost 2, burned myself badly enough that my grip has never fully recovered. I cannot play the pianoforte at all, Your Majesty. I can barely hold a teacup some mornings." "And yet you continued working as a physician's assistant after?" "For 2 more years, until my father's creditors began threatening to sell our estate. He needed me at home to help manage the household. A physician's assistant earns too little to pay his debts." "So you sacrificed your calling to save a man who now tries to hide you from a king?" Helena's mouth curved slightly. "Sacrifice implies I had a choice. My father had already sold most of our furniture. The alternative was destitution for my sister." Cordelia spoke for the first time. "Helena, please." Her voice trembled. "You will ruin everything." "The beautiful sister is afraid," Valerius observed. "Cordelia is afraid of most things," Helena said. It is not her fault. She was raised to be ornamental, and ornaments break easily. I was raised to be useful, and useful things are harder to destroy." The Baron stepped forward, his voice desperate. "Your Majesty, I beg you to forgive my daughter's impertinence. She does not understand court protocol. If you would simply allow me to present Cordelia properly." "Baron Ashworth." Valerius turned to face him fully, and the man flinched. "I came here tonight to find something I lost 3 centuries ago. Your eldest daughter, lovely as she is, reminds me of nothing but the 1,000 other lovely women I have been offered over the years. Your second daughter reminds me of someone I would have given my immortality to save." The court fractured into 100 small betrayals. Helena's eyes widened. "I do not choose the beautiful sister," Valerius said clearly. "I choose the one with scarred hands, if she will have me." The silence that followed was absolute. Helena stared at him, her pulse hammered in her throat. He could hear it, quick and strong and utterly human. "You are serious," she said. "I have not been flippant in 200 years. It requires more energy than I can spare." "You know nothing about me. I know you went into fire for strangers. I know you speak in direct sentences when the world expects circumlocution. I know you count syllables when nervous. And I know your face has haunted me since before your great-great-grandmother was born. That is not reason enough to choose a wife." "No," Valerius agreed. "But it is reason enough to ask if she will let me try to deserve her." Helena looked at her father. The Baron's face had gone slack with shock, his schemes crumbling around him. She looked at Cordelia, who seemed torn between relief and something that might have been envy. She looked at the assembled court, all those glittering vampires and their human consorts, watching her as if she were a curiosity in a menagerie. Then she looked at her hands, the scars that had defined her existence since the fire, the marks that had made suitors turn away, that had convinced her father she was worthless, that had ended her career when her grip became too unreliable for surgery. "I will make you a bargain," she said. Valerius raised an eyebrow. "Already negotiating. Interesting. You want something from me. My face, my resemblance to whoever I remind you of. That is a currency I did not know I possessed. I am willing to spend it, but not for free." "What do you want in return?" "My father's debts paid. A settlement for my sister that will allow her to marry whom she chooses, not whom she must. And a position for myself, not as decoration, but as something useful. You have physicians in your court, I assume?" "We have healers," Valerius said slowly, "though their methods differ from human medicine." "Then let me learn them. Let me be something more than a ghost who wears the face of a woman you lost." Her voice hardened. "If you want me for what I remind you of, you will be disappointed. I am not her. I will never be her. If that is unacceptable, choose Cordelia after all. She will try much harder to be whatever you need." The court watched in breathless silence. No one had ever spoken to the Vampire King this way. No one had ever dared. Valerius laughed. It was not the cruel laugh of a predator or the dismissive laugh of a tyrant. It was the startled, genuine laugh of a man who had forgotten such sounds existed. Several vampires exchanged alarmed glances. "You are nothing like her," he said, still smiling. Elara was gentle, accommodating. She bent herself into shapes that would please others until there was nothing left of herself to save. "You are a wall of iron wrapped in human skin." He extended his hand. "I accept your terms. All of them." Helena hesitated. 17 heartbeats passed. She counted them without meaning to. She placed her scarred hand in his. His skin was cold. She had expected that. What she had not expected was the way his fingers trembled slightly as they closed around hers, as if he were the one taking a risk. "Then we have a bargain," she said. The Baron stumbled forward. "Your Majesty, the wedding arrangements, the contracts, when should we expect—" "You should expect to receive documents from my solicitors within the week," Valerius said without looking at him. They will detail the settlement for Miss Cordelia and the terms for paying your debts. Whether you deserve such generosity is a question I will leave to your remaining daughter's conscience. But Helena, she cannot simply— She can. Helena's voice was sharp. I have made my choice, father. For the first time in 4 years, I have made a choice that is mine. You will accept the king's generosity and never speak of this night's humiliation again. 37 words. I am being extremely clear. The Baron closed his mouth. Cordelia stepped forward and embraced her sister. You did not have to do this, she whispered. You did not have to save us. Saving people is what I do, Helena said. It appears I have simply found a different method. Valerius watched them, the beautiful sister who had been offered, and the scarred one who had been chosen. He remembered Alara's face in the flames, her hands reaching toward him as she died. He had failed to save her. He had carried that failure for 300 years. This woman was not Alara. She had made that abundantly clear. She was harder, sharper, more likely to cut him than to bend for him. For the first time in centuries, he thought he might survive long enough to deserve happiness. The following week passed in a blur of contracts and preparations. Helena found herself installed in a suite of rooms in Thornwood Manor, the Vampire King's estate on the Scottish border. The manor was ancient, its stones older than the Norman conquest, its hallways filled with shadows that moved independently of their sources. She had expected to feel afraid. Instead, she felt curious. The healers began her training on the 3rd day. Vampire medicine, she discovered, operated on principles entirely different from human physiology. Where human physicians treated symptoms, vampire healers manipulated the fundamental energies of undeath, slowing decay, accelerating regeneration, binding wounds with threads of concentrated will. You have steady hands, the chief healer observed. Her name was Marguerite, and she had been dead for 600 years. Most humans tremble when they work with our kind. I have held organs in these hands, Helena said, 73 times by my count. After that, nothing seems particularly alarming. Marguerite laughed. It was the same startled sound Valerius had made at court. Helena was beginning to think that vampires had simply forgotten how to be surprised. She saw Valerius only at meals. She took alone in the great hall while he sat at the far end of the massive table, drinking from a silver goblet that she pretended not to recognize as blood. They spoke little, but she caught him watching her with an expression that made her ribs feel too tight. On the 5th night, she confronted him. You are staring, she said, not looking up from her soup. 14 times this evening, I have been counting. You remind me of her less and less each day, he said. It is disconcerting. Should I apologize for existing as myself? No. He set down the goblet. I find I prefer it. The memory was becoming a prison. You are a window. Helena looked up. His eyes, she noticed for the first time, were not the red of legend, but a deep amber, like honey held up to firelight. Tell me about her, Alara. If I am going to be compared to her for the rest of my life, I should know who she was. She was the daughter of a country squire. I met her at a harvest festival in 1594. She laughed at my jokes when no one else understood them. She saw what I was within a week and chose to love me anyway. His voice went flat. The villagers burned her for witchcraft. I arrived too late. I watched her die and could do nothing. And you have been looking for her ever since. I stopped looking 2 centuries ago. I assumed she was gone forever. He met her eyes. Then your father brought you to court, and I saw her face again, but not her soul. You are something entirely different wearing familiar features. Is that a disappointment? It is a relief. He stood. I have spent 300 years worshipping a ghost. You are the first real person I have seen in longer than I can remember. The counting, the directness, the way you bargained with me as if I were a merchant and not a king. Alara would never have done any of those things. She would have accepted whatever I offered and called it kindness. And you want someone who argues with you? I want someone who will tell me when I am being a fool. Immortality breeds foolishness. We have no natural predators except our own arrogance. Helena considered this. You are being a fool right now, by the way. Staring at me while I eat is not romantic. It is unnerving. Valerius smiled. It transformed his face, stripping away centuries of carefully maintained coldness. Would you prefer I join you? I would prefer you stop treating me like a relic and start treating me like an ally. We made a bargain. I intend to honor it. But I cannot be her replacement, and I refuse to spend eternity pretending. Then don't. He moved to the chair beside her, sitting close enough that she could feel the chill radiating from his skin. Tell me about yourself instead. The woman who went into fire for strangers. I want to know her, not the ghost I projected onto her face. Helena set down her spoon. 23 hours they had spent under the same roof, and this was the first time he had asked. What do you want to know? Everything. But start with the fire, she told him. Not the heroic version her father told when he wanted to seem sympathetic, not the tragic version that made her sound like a martyr. She told him the truth, the smell of smoke that woke her, the screaming from the upper floors, the way she had calculated the odds and decided that 3 old women were worth more than her hands. She told him about the 2 she could not reach, whose faces she still saw in dreams. She told him about the months of recovery, the skin grafts that failed, the moment she realized she would never perform surgery again. I counted everything for a year afterward, she said. Steps, syllables, heartbeats. It was the only way to feel in control. 47,000 steps from the hospital to my father's house. I walked it twice when I was well enough. And the counting helps? It gives my mind something to do besides remember. 17 muscles in the human hand. I can name all of them, but I can only reliably use 11 of mine now. Valerius reached across the table. His hand hovered over hers, not touching, waiting for permission. Helena turned her palm upward. His fingers traced the scars gently. His touch was cold but careful, mapping the ridges of damaged tissue as if reading a story written in her skin. You count because it reminds you that you survived, he said quietly. Not the women you saved, not the ones you lost, you. I count because the numbers do not lie. Her voice was thick. Everything else does. My father tells me I am a burden. Society tells me I am ruined. Even the mirror tells me I should be ashamed. But 17 stitches closed my left palm, and 7 closed my right, and those are facts that no one can take from me. Then here is another fact. His hand closed around hers. You are the most extraordinary person I have met in 3 centuries. Not because you remind me of anyone, but because you do not try to be anything other than what you are. The moment stretched between them, fragile as spun glass. A servant appeared in the doorway. Your Majesty, Lord Blackwell has arrived. He insists on an audience. Valerius's expression went cold. Now? He says it concerns the Northern Territories, and... The servant hesitated. And the woman you chose at court. Helena felt the change in Valerius's posture, the tension, the sudden predatory stillness. Who is Lord Blackwell? The leader of the Eastern Coven. Valerius stood, releasing her hand. He has coveted my throne for decades, and he was present at court when I chose you. His mouth became a bloodless line. Wait here. If this concerns me, I should be present. Helena, our bargain included the word ally. Allies do not hide in back rooms while their partners face threats. She stood. 42 words. I am coming with you. Lord Blackwell was a tall vampire with silver hair and eyes the color of winter ice. He stood in the center of the receiving hall, flanked by 2 guards in matching livery. His smile, when Helena entered on Valerius's arm, was thin and knowing. Ah, he said, the scarred one. I wondered if the rumors were true. The rumors are always true, Helena said before Valerius could speak. That is what makes them useful. Blackwell's smile flickered. You speak boldly for a human. I speak clearly. There is a difference. Boldness implies courage. Clarity requires only practice. 28 words. What do you want, my lord? I want what any loyal subject wants. Blackwell inclined his head toward Valerius. To serve my king, and to protect him from unfortunate entanglements. Meaning me. Meaning a woman with no name, no fortune, and no power, who has somehow convinced the most powerful vampire in Britain to make her his consort. Blackwell spread his hands. Surely you understand the concern. Our king has never shown interest in any woman since the Alara incident. Now he selects a human who bears her exact face? Some might call that obsession. Some might call it fate, Valerius said coldly. What is your actual purpose here, Blackwell? I bring a petition from the Eastern Coven. We request that the king's choice of consort be reviewed by the Council of Elders before any formal bonding takes place. It is a reasonable precaution given the circumstances. The circumstances being that you dislike my choice? The circumstances being that your choice may not be entirely your own. Blackwell's eyes glinted. There are ways to influence a vampire's mind. Subtle enchantments, blood magic. A human with the right knowledge could theoretically— Are you accusing me of witchcraft? Helena interrupted. That is rather medieval, is it not? 4,712 people were executed for witchcraft in Europe between 1500 and 1660. I counted them once when I was researching old medical texts. The actual number of genuine witches among them was almost certainly 0. Blackwell stared at her. You are unusual. I am a physician's assistant who counts things when nervous. There is nothing supernatural about it. If you wish to accuse me of controlling the king's mind, you will need evidence beyond the fact that he chose me over a more conventional option. The evidence, Blackwell said smoothly, is that you bear the face of a woman he has been mourning for 3 centuries. What better weapon could there be? A weapon implies intention. Helena stepped forward. I did not choose this face. I did not know Alara existed until 5 days ago. I went to court because my father forced me, and I was chosen because the king saw something in me that surprised him. If that constitutes mind control, then every romance in history has been witchcraft. Valerius moved to stand beside her. The petition is denied, Blackwell. Helena is under my protection, and her status as consort is not subject to council review. The council may disagree. The council may try. Valerius's voice dropped to something dangerous. But they will find that I am not the weak king they remember. I have been reminded recently that there are things worth fighting for. Blackwell's smile returned, thin as a blade. Very well, Your Majesty. I will convey your decision to the council. But I would suggest keeping a close watch on your new consort. The world is full of dangers, and some of them wear friendly faces. He swept out, his guards following. The doors closed behind them with an echoing boom. Helena released a breath she had not realized she was holding. That was a threat. That was a warning. Valerius turned to her. Blackwell has wanted my throne for 50 years. He has never had the support to challenge me directly. But if he can prove that my judgment is compromised, then he can claim you are unfit to rule. Helena nodded. And I am the evidence, the human woman who appeared from nowhere and bewitched the king. We need to prove that my choice was rational, not magical. Valerius began pacing. The council will convene within the month. If Blackwell can demonstrate that your resemblance to Alara is supernatural rather than coincidental— Is it? Helena asked quietly. Coincidental, I mean? Valerius stopped. What do you mean? I did not know Alara existed, but perhaps my family did. My grandmother came from a village in the north. She died before I was born, and my father never spoke of her. Is it possible that you are descended from Alara's bloodline? Valerius's eyes widened. She had a sister, younger. I never knew what happened to her after the burning. Then we need to find out. Helena straightened. If I am Ilara's descendant, then my resemblance is genealogy, not witchcraft. The council cannot claim supernatural influence over simple heredity. The records would be in the village archives, if they still exist. Then we go there. Helena moved toward the door. How far is it to the village where Ilara died? 2 days' ride. But Helena, the villagers who burned her may have descendants still living there. They will not welcome a vampire king seeking answers. Then they will have to deal with a former physician's assistant instead. She looked back at him. I told you I would be useful. Let me prove it. Valerius stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed again, that startled, genuine sound she was beginning to crave. You are nothing like her, he said, and I am grateful for it every moment. They left at dawn. Helena had never ridden so far in her life. By the end of the first day, every muscle screamed in protest. By the second morning, she had stopped counting the aches and started counting the miles instead. 14 miles to the village. 13, 12. Valerius rode beside her, wrapped in heavy cloaks to protect him from the weak winter sun. He did not need to breathe, she noticed. His horse seemed to understand this and moved with an almost supernatural smoothness. Tell me about the village, she said as they crossed a frozen stream. What was it like in 1594? Small, suspicious. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone's secrets and strangers were watched like hawks. His voice was distant. Ilara lived on the outskirts with her father and sister. She used to meet me in the forest at night. We would talk until dawn, and then I would carry her home before the sun rose. How long were you together? 3 months. Not long enough to know each other truly. Long enough to imagine we did. He was quiet for a moment. I have spent 3 centuries romanticizing a woman I barely understood. You were right to refuse to be her replacement. I did not refuse kindly. You refused honestly. That is kinder than you know. The village appeared through the trees as the sun began to set. A cluster of cottages huddled around a stone church, smoke rising from chimneys, livestock calling for their evening feed. It looked peaceful. It looked ordinary. It looked nothing like a place where a woman had burned for love. They found lodging at a small inn. Valerius compelled the innkeeper to forget their faces, a trick that made Helena deeply uncomfortable, but which she recognized as necessary. By the time darkness fell fully, they had eaten and rested and prepared to seek answers. The church records were their first target. Helena had visited enough rural parishes during her years as a physician's assistant to know where such records were kept. Dusty alcoves, forgotten basements, locked cabinets that no one had opened in decades. The vicar was old, nearly deaf, and easily convinced that Helena was researching her family history. Ashworth, you say? We had Ashworths here centuries ago. Let me find the baptismal records. While he shuffled through yellowed pages, Helena examined the church walls. Names carved into stone, dates worn smooth by time, memorials to families long extinct. And there, in a shadowed corner, Valerius. She kept her voice low. Look. A small plaque, half hidden behind a wooden pew. The inscription read, In memory of those who perished in the fire of 1594. May God have mercy on their souls. The official story, Valerius said quietly. A fire, not an execution. The villagers rewrote history. Or the next generation did. Helena traced the carved letters. Shame has a long memory. They could not admit what their parents did, so they invented a tragedy instead. The vicar returned with a heavy ledger. Here we are, Ashworths. Let me see. Ah yes, Margaret Ashworth, born 1581, married Thomas Gray in 1602. 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. Margaret, Helena's heart began to race. Ilara's sister, Valerius breathed. She survived, she married, she had children. And her descendants? Helena asked the vicar. The old man traced the lines with a gnarled finger. The daughter married a merchant named Blackwood. Moved south. The Blackwood line continued through several generations until, he squinted, until a woman named Catherine Blackwood married a Baron Ashworth in 1782. Helena sat down heavily on the nearest pew. 18 generations. 300 years. The blood of Alara's sister had flowed through her veins all along. I am her descendant, she said. Not Alara's, but her sister's. That is why I look like her. Family resemblance preserved through centuries. Then Blackwell's accusations are baseless. Valerius took her hands. There is no witchcraft here, only genealogy. The council will have to accept that. Will they? Helena looked up at him. Blackwell wanted to destroy your claim to the throne. He will not give up simply because I found a church record. No, Valerius agreed. He will need to be dealt with directly. But this, he raised her scarred hands to his lips, this is a beginning. They left the church as the moon rose over the village square. Blackwell's men were waiting for them, 6 vampires in dark cloaks blocking the path to the inn. Their leader stepped forward, a thin woman with red hair and a cruel smile. Lord Blackwell sends his regards, Your Majesty, and his regrets that you will not be returning to court. Valerius pushed Helena behind him. You would commit treason so openly, Rosalind? Treason requires a legitimate king. Rosalind drew a silver knife. The council has already convened in your absence. They have ruled that your attachment to this human constitutes a breach of sanity. Your throne is forfeit. The council has no authority to rule without me present. The council has whatever authority Blackwell gives them. Rosalind advanced. Now, you have a choice. Surrender the human and accept exile, or die here in this forgotten village. Either way, she does not survive the night. Helena's mind raced. 6 vampires. 1 king. 1 human with scarred hands and no weapon. The odds were impossible. 17 stitches in her left palm, 7 in her right. 24 marks of survival. I have a counteroffer, she said, stepping out from behind Valerius. Rosalind laughed. The human speaks. How delightful. What could you possibly offer? Information. Helena kept her voice steady. Lord Blackwell wants the throne, but thrones are heavy things, and they require support. How many of the council actually support him versus how many simply fear him? Rosalind's smile flickered. What does that matter? It matters because fear is temporary. Fear requires constant reinforcement, but loyalty, genuine loyalty, lasts forever. Helena stepped closer. I have been watching your people at court, counting them as I count everything. 47 vampires attended the gathering where I was chosen. Of those, only 11 stood near Blackwell. The rest kept their distance. Some even looked relieved when the king chose me. You counted the court's political affiliations in a single evening? I counted everything. It is what I do. Helena tilted her head. How many of you are here because you believe in Blackwell's cause, and how many are here because he threatened something you love? Silence. 2 of the vampires exchanged uneasy glances. Here is my offer, Helena continued. Let us return to court. Let me present the evidence we found tonight. Evidence that proves my resemblance to Alara is genealogical, not magical. If I can convince the council that the king's choice was rational, Blackwell loses his primary argument. He cannot claim supernatural influence over simple family inheritance. And why would we allow that? Rosalind demanded. Because if Blackwell falls, everyone who supported him falls with him. But if you switch sides now, if you escort us safely back to court and testify that Blackwell ordered this ambush, you become heroes instead of traitors. The king is famously merciful. He might even be grateful. Rosalind hesitated. Helena pressed her advantage. 37 hours until the council reconvenes. That is how long you have to decide. Die here as Blackwell's pawns or live as the king's saviors. The mathematics are simple. Even I can calculate them without counting twice. The silence stretched like wire. Then one of the vampires stepped forward, a young man with dark eyes and trembling hands. Blackwell has my sister, he said. He promised to release her if I served him tonight. Then help us defeat him, Valerius said quietly, and I will personally ensure her freedom. Another vampire moved, a woman with silver streaks in her black hair. He holds my estate in debt. 500 years of family history traded for political loyalty. The debt will be forgiven. One by one, 4 of the 6 vampires stepped away from Rosalind. She stood alone with a single loyal guard, her silver knife suddenly inadequate against the shifting tide. "This is not over," she hissed. "No," Helena agreed. "It is just beginning. 18 words. You should run." Rosalind ran. They returned to court with an escort of 4 reformed conspirators and proof of Blackwell's treachery. Helena presented the church records to the council herself, standing before 47 ancient vampires with her scarred hands folded calmly before her. Margaret Ashworth, she said, was Ilara's younger sister. She survived the burning and married Thomas Gray. Her descendants eventually merged with the Ashworth line through marriage. I am not a magical resurrection of the king's lost love. I am simply her sister's great-great-great-great-granddaughter. The resemblance is genealogy, not sorcery. The council murmured among themselves. Lord Blackwell, standing in chains at the edge of the room, had gone pale. Furthermore, Helena continued, Lord Blackwell ordered my assassination 2 nights ago in direct defiance of council protocol. 4 of his 6 agents have provided testimony confirming this. He holds vampires in his service through threats and debt manipulation, not loyalty. His claim to the throne was never legitimate. It was coercion dressed in politics. The council elder, a vampire so old her skin had turned nearly translucent, raised one thin hand. You speak well for a human, but you have not addressed the central question. Why should the king choose you at all? You bring nothing to this alliance, no fortune, no power, no political advantage. Helena smiled. It was not a kind smile. I bring 24 stitches worth of survival. I bring 7 years of medical training that your healers have already begun teaching me to apply to vampire physiology. I bring a mind that counts everything and forgets nothing. Means I notice that Lord Blackwell's primary supporter on this council has been slowly poisoning her neighbor for 6 months in an attempt to inherit his territory. The council erupted. A thin vampire near the back went rigid with shock. Her neighbor, a portly gentleman who had looked increasingly ill, turned to stare at her with dawning horror. 17 doses of silver solution in wine, Helena said calmly. I counted the stains on his goblet at 3 separate council dinners. The pattern matched the progression of silver poisoning I learned about during my medical training. Marguerite confirmed my diagnosis this morning. You cannot prove. I do not need to prove it. Your reaction just did. Helena turned back to the council elder. I bring value because I see what others miss. The king did not choose me for my face. He chose me because I argued with him, because I negotiated, because I refused to be a ghost wearing familiar features. He chose me because I am useful. The elder studied her for a long moment. Then she laughed. The same startled, genuine sound that Valerius had made, that Marguerite had made, that apparently defined a vampire encountering genuine surprise. The council accepts the evidence, the elder pronounced. Lord Blackwell is stripped of his titles and territories for attempted regicide and treason. Lady Marchmont is remanded for investigation of poisoning, and the king's choice of consort is ratified as legitimate. The chamber burst into applause. Helena found Valerius at her side, his hand closing over her scarred fingers. You are extraordinary, he murmured. I am observant. She looked up at him. There is a difference. Extraordinary implies I did something difficult. I simply counted what was in front of me and drew conclusions. You saved my throne. I saved my investment. We made a bargain, remember? Your debts to my father, my sister's settlement, my position as something useful. I protect my interests. Is that all this is? His voice was soft. Business? Helena hesitated. 47 vampires watched them. The council elder waited with ancient patience. Somewhere in the crowd, Marguerite was smiling. No, she admitted quietly. It stopped being business 3 days ago, when you told me you preferred the window to the prison. But I did not know how to say that without counting all the reasons I should not. And now? Now I have counted them. 17 reasons to keep you at a distance. 11 reasons to let you closer. She met his eyes. The mathematics are complicated. I do not know which number wins. Perhaps, Valeria said, we could calculate together. He kissed her. It was gentle, careful, cold lips against warm ones, 300 years of loneliness meeting 24 stitches of survival. Helena's scarred hands rose to cup his face, feeling the impossible stillness of skin that would never age. And she thought, this is what it feels like to stop counting. The council applauded again. Somewhere, someone was crying. Helena did not count the tears. For once, she did not need to. 6 months later, Helena stood in the healing chambers of Thornwood Manor, stitching a wound that would have killed any human patient. The vampire on the table, a young woman named Catherine who had been attacked by rogue hunters, watched with wide eyes as Helena's scarred hands moved with practiced precision. You are not afraid of us, Catherine whispered. I am afraid of many things. Vampires are not among them. Helena tied off the final suture. 23 stitches. You will heal completely within a week. Try not to provoke any more hunters until then. How did you learn to do this? Human medicine and vampire healing? They should not work together. They work together because I stopped assuming they could not. Helena cleaned her instruments. The body wants to heal. Human or vampire, that instinct is the same. I simply learned to work with it instead of against it. Valerius appeared in the doorway. His eyes found Helena immediately, as they always did now. Not with the hungry desperation of a man seeking a ghost, but with the warm certainty of someone who had found exactly what he needed. The council is convening, he said. They want to discuss formalizing your position. My position as what? Chief healer? Political advisor? Bargain keeper? Helena smiled. I have collected several titles since arriving. I am not sure which one they want to make official. All of them. Valerius crossed to her side. But mostly, they want to discuss making you queen. Helena's hands stilled. I am not Ilara. No. You are Helena Ashworth, the woman who walked into fire for strangers, who counted her way through grief, who negotiated with a king and won. You are the woman I fell in love with because you were nothing like anyone I had ever known. That is a considerable number of qualifications. I have had 300 years to learn what I value. It did not take long to recognize it when I found it. Helena turned to face him. Her scarred hands rose to rest against his chest. She could feel nothing there. No heartbeat, no warmth, only the absolute stillness of immortality. But she had stopped needing those signs to know he was real. If I become queen, she said carefully, I will continue to count everything. I will argue with the council when they are wrong. I will spend more time in the healing chambers than in the throne room. I will never learn to play the pianoforte, and I will always speak in direct sentences when the situation calls for subtlety. 47 words. Are you certain that is what you want? I am certain of nothing except that I want you exactly as you are. He pressed his forehead against hers. Will you let me try to deserve you for the rest of eternity? Helena laughed. It was the same startled, genuine sound she had been teaching the vampires to remember. That is a very long bargain. We can renegotiate the terms as needed. Then yes, she kissed him softly. I will let you try. Through the window of the healing chamber, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of amber and gold. Helena counted the colors, 17 distinct variations between yellow and red, and then stopped. Some things, she was learning, did not need to be measured to be real. They simply needed to be felt.